Good morning, everyone. Lots going on. As usual, somber day. Today is November 11th, 2023, Remembrance Day. And today we're going to look at Remembrance Day around the world right now. What's happening in London is interesting. The moment of silence was able to go off without a hitch, but there were clashes with police. There are embassies that are no-go zones that are blocked off because of concerns about violence and protests, and a whole lot more. So it's really interesting, the different timbre of this Remembrance Day because of what's going on in the world. And it seems like the West is being pushed into multiple wars, whichever one will stick. And then who knows, right? All bets are off. I'm concerned that the lessons of the past have been forgotten to a degree, and the forgetting has been accelerated through censorship, through reimagining history, through reimagining the for your safety narrative and selling that to a younger generation, directly selling communism to a younger generation as something that will fix the problems that have been caused by the bad policies that we're living through. So it's an interesting, again, it seems like an inflection point. It seems like, well, a reminder and a poignant one about what we may have already forgotten. And again, I hope I'm wrong about that, but Jeepers Creepers, we'll look at Remembrance Day. The big news, and really, like I say lots going on every day, but that's because there really is a lot going on. Andy Lee has an unbelievable investigation going on, looking at where are these companies that are taking in $100 million of Canadian government tax dollars to do projects and things like that. And she can't find the offices. She can't find anybody to have meetings with. And the people she talks to realize who she is or realize what's going on, and they don't want to talk to her anymore. I'll show you that. 6 offices in, and she's found a couple of contacts that maybe know what's going on, but overall, she can't find this company. And if they're taking hundreds of millions of dollars of Canadian tax dollars to fulfill projects, you'd think that you'd be able to find their office. The office is listed as the address for the companies that are taking this money. You'd think that you'd be able to find them, right? But Andy Lee can't, and she's pretty good at that kind of stuff. The SDTC head has resigned after the appearance at committee I showed you yesterday, where Larry Brock and Michael, oh my goodness, Michael Cooper and the rest are all sitting looking very self-satisfied and incredulous, like they cannot believe what they're hearing from this woman, and they say it back to her, and then at the end of the thing they look at each other and say, incredible, I can't believe that you didn't recuse yourself from giving yourself and your company $200,000. My next question is, what did you do with the money? Where is the money now? Can you give us receipts about what your company did during the pandemic to need that $200,000? I'm interested, right? She resigned. So is that good enough? Is this case closed, or is this just case beginning? I think the ghost contracting scandal is huge. It's bigger than Arrive can be, bigger than GC Securities, bigger than all of it. And it's a huge scandal, and bigger than bigger than SNC Lavalin, all of it. Leslie Lewis is calling for accountability in the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, and she says it should be abolished because it's not doing what it's mandated to do. And the premiers are all writing a letter to well, not all the premiers, but a lot of the premiers, Doug Ford, Danielle Smith, Hicks, all the premiers who have already previously asked Justin Trudeau for a letter about the carbon tax have asked for a letter about the carbon tax, or asked for a meeting about the carbon tax. So they've written a letter to underscore that they want another meeting about the carbon tax because it's not fair, and they don't like that. And Justin Trudeau should listen to these people because they represent the Canadian people. So say, yeah, a little bit, I guess. Doug Ford has not done a very good job. Doug Ford came in saying he was going to do certain things. He didn't do those things, and he shut down playgrounds until people said, you can arrest me. Those playgrounds are staying open. So I don't know. Doug Ford's been disappointing. I was disappointed with Jason Kenney. Danielle Smith is an interesting conundrum. She seems like she plays the carbon tax game, but she seems like she's willing to take on the federal government. If she wins the CPP Alberta pension plan fight, that's going to be very interesting to see, because if that happens, then I think all provinces have to take care of their own, because the CPP is not viable without Alberta. So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. Anyway, let's get into it. There's lots to get to. So first, the best damn roofer points this out. He says, never forget how the evil world leaders pushed our grandparents into war. Yeah, yep. There's a lot of things about the Second World War that the more you dig into it, and the more you dig into it, understanding better what happened in 2020 with COVID, and the more you dig into it, understanding that the history, think about what we know about January 6th. think about what history says about January 6th and what the actual footage that they won't release says, et cetera, et cetera. I remember watching the live stream. There was no insurrection. So I feel that history is full of examples like that. And it's very, very interesting having a world war, the First World War, happened right after the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. The whole purpose of the Federal Reserve was to lend to government instruments. Why would government instruments need to borrow anything? Well, of course, a war, right? Like if they have expenses that would exceed their GDP, then they have to borrow. And then that's guaranteed returns, right? So like this is a great way to make money. And then, so 1913, the Fed is created. 1914, the First World War breaks out. And at the end of the First World War, Germany is blamed. The armistice, the treaty at the end of the First World War sets up the conditions for the Second World War. Like it's not, you didn't set up a condition at the end of the First World War to make sure that another war didn't happen. They in fact did the opposite. They set up conditions so that another war was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. And so that's just economically crushing the place and so on and so forth. You're going to create the circumstances to have people push back and say, we're not going to put up with this anymore. Thank you very much. Get out. So it's an interesting situation, knowing what history kind of entails. And it looks like history is repeating. So being pushed into war is nothing new, from Ukraine, Russia, to Israel, Hamas, Palestine, and First World War, Second World War, and so on and so forth, right? There's a lot of really interesting things the more you read about it. Melissa says, on this Remembrance Day, let's not forget that Trudeau and his government actually spend millions of dollars battling veterans in court. We owe our veterans everything, and I thank them for their service. Here's just a reminder of that. Here we go.
No veteran will be forced to fight their own government for the support and compensation that they have earned.
Yet, since 2016, the person who said that has spent $43.5 million fighting veterans and their families in court, forcing them to fight for the support and compensation that they've earned. Well, whoever made that promise and broke it, please stand up and explain to veterans and their families why he broke that promise. Honorable, they've earned.
No veteran.
This press conference was before Justin Trudeau got elected, and he was giving Harper a hard time for changing certain rules around veterans compensation, et cetera, et cetera. And that was his argument. And then he immediately reneged on it, and then had the gall to tell a veteran to his face that veterans were asking for too much. How many billions have we sent to Ukraine? Asking for too much. Are you kidding me? Ink Monocle is pointing out what's going on in England right now for their Remembrance Day. It's Armistice Day 2023. Jews are staying out of London. Poppy sellers are keeping away. Soldiers have been told not to wear their medals or regalia. The Met, the police in London, have had to draft in hundreds of officers. I've actually heard thousands. I heard they had 1,000 officers off on just, off because of the regular ebb and flow of how you staff a police service, right? You have X amount of staff. So they had an extra 1,000 officers who weren't scheduled to work today, and they brought them all back, according to things that I've read online. So they've brought back in a bunch of more officers, at least hundreds. I've heard up to 1,000. The cenotaph is being guarded. There is an exclusion zone around the U.S. Embassy. On our sacred day, they say, we all know why. It's already gone too far, and the day hasn't begun yet. So that's bad. The prediction is not great, but here's what actually happened. This is in London for the moment of silence, and it was respected. So I'll just play like 15 seconds or something like that, but you can hear, right? And you can see there's lots of people here. You can hear some faint people in the distance, but largely it's respected. This is a 10-minute clip. I haven't watched all 10 minutes, so but I think that's enough there to get a taste of what's going on. It seems very calm there now, but a couple of hours ago, at 6 o'clock in the morning, actually not that long ago, an hour and a bit ago, there was clashes between the police not letting peaceful people trying to get close to the cenotaph get close to the cenotaph. They were trying to block them off, and people started chanting that. Well, here's what they started chanting.
You let your country down! You let your country down! You let your country down! You let your country down!
So it almost sounded like it was going to be a good little sing-song there for a minute, but it didn't quite take off. But they were saying, you let your country down. And so it's interesting. They broke through. There's footage of Tommy Robinson, who's back on Twitter, who was walking up and they were trying to block him and they were blaming him, but it wasn't him that pushed through the police lines. It was the crowd behind him just pushing them all through. Like there wasn't anything anybody could do to stop it, from what I saw on the footage. So it'll be interesting. But as soon as they were able to access the cenotaph, as soon as they were able to get in there, apparently, it all calmed down. Everybody was just peaceful and trying to pay their respects to the fallen soldiers, right? So that's an interesting situation, don't you think? They're saying, no, there's going to be protests. You have to stay away. And then, but when people actually accessed what they wanted to access, everything was just fine. So are the police creating these situations by over responding? I don't know, maybe. Here's Wall Street Silver. This isn't necessarily Remembrance Day directly, but it's kind of tangentially the protests and all of that. Wall Street Silver is pointing this out. Spain's socialists will never deploy the police or the Navy to stop the fake refugee migrants landing on their beaches, but they will against their own citizens. Just about every European government is like this, and Canada too. They seem determined to speed along their own countries into oblivion. So Ian Miles Chong says it's going down in Madrid tonight as police take on nationalist protesters fed up of the country's descent into socialism. So when pro-Palestinian protesters storm the Capitol building, that's not an insurrection. But when pro-Trump nationalist people do the same, that is, and those people have to rot in prison, right? When truckers go to Ottawa and raise $10 million through GoFundMe, that's terrorism. But when Palestinian protesters go and do a lot of the same things that the truckers did in Ottawa, that's just fine. And in fact, encouraged. The honking is fine. The flag waving is fine. The Nazi regalia, the swastika, which was there for the Palestinian protesters, not talked about by all of the, well, some politicians picked it up, but it wasn't the focus, like Justin Trudeau used it as a focus piece to vilify the truckers. It was kind of glossed over, in my opinion. So this is happening not just in Canada, but happening all over the West, right? And Spain as well, Europe. It's incredible. It's not good. It's not good, and it's something that we should pay attention to, especially on this Remembrance Day. So I know the intro was a bit long. I hope that's all right. Larry Brock, let's talk about the ghost contracting scandals. There are multiple, and Larry Brock says, the misuse of millions of taxpayer dollars is being investigated by the police. Canadians are outraged, and the Liberals keep repeating their old talking points. They protect their boss. They protect their insiders. It's time to stop this corrupt solidarity. It is, man. It is. They either don't know or they weren't told, right? Conveniently, there's a breakdown in communications, we'll do better. But they always use the talking points as a life raft. They're always just using that. They read from their papers and everything's supposed to be just fine. We're all supposed to just go to sleep and ignore what they've actually done in favor of the nice lies they're telling us, right? Here's this exchange with Larry Brock. Here we go.
Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, Liberal insiders, officials and members behave like the law doesn't apply to them. They mislead committee, they threaten co-workers and funnel taxpayer money through ghost contractors and even through their own companies. $54 million on the Arrive scam app is only the tip of the iceberg. Now the RCMP are investigating corruption with this NDP Liberal government. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Canadians have had enough of this blatant misuse of taxpayer monies. Is it finally enough for this Prime Minister?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said time and time again, we expect all contracts to be issued following the law as well as procurement regulations. Mr. Speaker, any actions of misconduct will come with consequences. We look forward to the report and the investigations that are ongoing. But, Mr. Speaker, once again, our expectations are that contracts are fulfilled and issued following the law.
Right, but that's not exactly what's happening. And there's no real oversight to make sure that anything's following the law. And there's no real, I mean, nobody knew that the chair of this SDTC was also giving herself $200,000 contracts until or Larry Brock and these guys all brought it up and said, hold on a second, this is what you said, which is in direct contradiction to these receipts we've got here. And then she says, oh yeah, but it was a really scary time. And then she resigns, right? Like, this is a problem. You see, there's nobody making sure that the law is being followed, despite what the Liberals say. And that's something to note, right? Larry Brock again says, breaking: the president of Trudeau's billion-dollar green slush fund resigns over corruption scandal. Senior government officials say the fund was giving away free money and was a sponsorship scandal level kind of giveaway. More to come. Yeah, and I mean, anybody watching the show for any period of time, we've watched this unfold. These guys are absolutely going after everybody they can, and it's not stopping yet. It's still expanding. There's still bringing in evidence. It's almost discovery in public. It's almost finding out the evidence in public and figuring out what's going on. But it's not quite. I don't think that they're going to prosecute using this data. I mean, they could investigate, and maybe in a court they're going to ask the similar questions. But we're getting a window into an incredible amount of corruption at this point in time. And I don't know that people understand how bad this is. This is capital B bad. Okay. Maybe that should be the title of this show. Hold on a second. Here's Larry Brock again. He's going after more evidence. He says the chief technology officer for the government is at the center of damning allegations. He's accused of uttering threats and lying before Parliament over the $54 million ArriveCan app. He must appear before committee on Tuesday. So that's fun, right? That's fun. So bringing these people in, finding out what's going on, maybe instigating an RCMP investigation. But the problem is, like the Senate vote for the Bill C-234 about the carbon taxes applying to farmers, other things that the carbon tax applies to that farms need to pay for, right? It's going to get caught up in legislative mumbo jumbo, right? Like, they could have this slam dunk case and they send it to the RCMP, and the RCMP does what they did with the Nova Scotia shooter, which is bubkiss, nothing at all, right? They say, oh, we didn't know about that. We didn't know about that. There are places where you can go, and Noel was talking about this on a Canada Poly kitchen table talk the other Sunday, but he was saying that this guy, and I can't remember the guy's name, so apologies, but he's got the story. He knows what happened. He's put it all together. You can go find out. So, like, we've got people who are doing the job of the RCMP when the RCMP is doing the job of covering up their incompetence. And that's terrible, right? That's terrible. I mean, we've got people Andy Lee's doing the job of the CBC, right? Greg's doing the job of the CBC. I'm doing the job of the CBC, right? And they're doing the job of covering up the government's lies. And it's just a really strange kind of thing, right? So I don't know. The people who remember what Canada was, they're doing it, man. They're doing the real work. Greg says, this is bigger than we, and bigger than the SNC Lavalin scandals combined. I want to see every person involved, as well as everyone who knew it was happening and didn't say anything, charged with grand larceny and conspiracy to defraud the Canadian public. Do you think that would be bigger than the OJ trial? I would hope that it would be bigger than the OJ trial. You've been stolen from Canada to the tune of millions of dollars by government ghost contractors. Do you want to know more? Here's this trial. And people would just be like, yawn. Perez Hilton's not covering it, so I'm not really sure if this is real news. This is fake news. Andy Lee says, I'm telling you, they get around $100 million per year from government contracts, and I can't find their office. Office number 8. Here's office number 8. This is a place called West Blah, and this is a timber industry company, and it is not what it's supposed to be, right? And that's pretty wild stuff. Here's Andy Lee again. She says, I called the number given to me for their headquarters of this company, which receives $100 million per year from the Canadian government, to make an appointment to speak to management. It rings, looks like no one's home. This is what should be at the address. We will see what we find there later today. And I think later today they find this. So this is possibly out of order. But all of them have been mistaken. They've been wrong, right? It's very, very interesting. And Andy Lee cannot get a hold of anybody to actually talk to anybody. This is what's happening when she talked to the listing agent. She says, after calling the listing agent, he confirms that the company is no longer operating out of that space, even though they're on the directory. I tell him the story and ask why they left and ask him if I can view it. He says no, and then he can't talk to me anymore because he can't talk to me anymore about it, and he hangs up. Crazy, right? It's crazy. And James says, this appears to be the worst scam and money laundering theft that I've ever seen from Canadian Liberal corruption. We was bad enough, but this is worse. Andy Lee says, OMG, this is so bad. And it gets worse every day. Capital B bad. It's really bad. And like, what do you do? The Liberals are going to sit here. Francois Philippe Champagne has already said, the buck stops with me. I will fire you. He hired him and his cronies, hired Leif Marouf. Well, I'll fire you. I'll fire you and make sure you get that $200,000 we promised you, right? Like, I'll fire you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Come on. For real? The whole thing is unbelievable. And it gets worse. Like, it's not getting better. It gets worse. Here's the Liberal Party building homes faster in Quebec and across the country. And Trudeau's talking about a housing accelerator fund. And it's interesting because the pushback on this, so you can see the ratio. I'm not going to torture us by playing Trudeau's thing here, but the ratio is high. And a lot of the comments, I'm not going to go through them. A lot of the comments are talking about how, if anything, Justin Trudeau is bringing in 1 million people and not even coming close to meeting the demand created by that 1 million people. So people get it. It's not just me screaming into my YouTubeless void, right? Other people understand that when you build 30,000 houses and you import 1 million people, that math doesn't ever work. And building houses is not going to solve the problem. Even if you build 200,000 houses, you're still 800,000 houses short, approximately, for just that population coming in. And then you've got next year where you're going to build 30,000 houses, maybe 200,000 houses, maybe. And you're 1,800 short, like 1.8 million short, like not 800,000 anymore. Anyway, the math's probably wrong. But I'm fundamentally saying that yesterday I used a bathtub, and if you take 20% out and it keeps going up by 80%, you're bailing too slowly. The bathtub is absolutely going to overflow. And if you continue at that rate, the bathtub is just going to keep overflowing at a faster and faster. Like, there is going to be a lot of people who cannot find a house. Supply and demand is going to be crazy, and the price is going to continue to climb. And they're not going to solve this problem. The solution? 15-minute cities, building by transit, large towers. Are you ready? Whew, I'm not, right? High-density slums. We don't need to live in high-density slums in Canada. Lauren Southern is talking about high-density slums in Vancouver. She says if you drive around Vancouver's new developments, and they're fenced in by advertisements exclusively in Chinese. Why do you think that is? Despite a catastrophic housing crisis, the homes aren't for Canadians, they're for foreign investors. So we're going to not own anything. We're going to rent. From who? The same people who we were supposed to buy the solar panels from. I don't think solar panels work in Canada because of wintertime and snow. And in the wintertime, in addition to the snow covering the panels that would prevent them from getting the sunlight to them, the sun only shines for 6 or 7 hours a day. Like it's not like the sun is really strong for those 6 or 7 hours either. So it doesn't work. It's not a viable replacement for oil and gas. Here's Lauren Souther talking about housing.
You take a look at these family homes, which is exactly where you would want to go to raise your family and children if you live in Vancouver, and you are priced out of the market by foreign money. Chinese investors snapping up residences all over the community, deliberately depriving people of a place to live. This is the real culture war. You take a look at these family homes, which is exactly where you...
Yeah, the real culture war. They're doing everything they can to, well, make sure you own nothing. And hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful